I'm a cross-channel audience strategist at Merkle, a leading CRM agency, and I'm thrilled to be on a panel today with these three personalization gurus. So with that, Wayne, do you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Wayne Miller. I'm with a little ride-sharing platform you may have heard of called Uber. I lead CRM on the driver side of the business, so helping drivers get everything they need to get on the platform and start driving with Uber. I promised I would, so I just want to give a quick shout out to Matt Bird. A lot of you guys know him watching at home. Hi, Matt. I love you.
Hey, Itai from Warner Music. Warner is one of the largest record companies in the world. We have about 15 sub-record labels and over 1,000 artists that we sign that are signed to us. We produce, market, and distribute their music. I'm part of the Artist Services division that runs centralized distribution and marketing technology, where we build all the websites, commerce, brand licensing, run the email list and CRM strategy. And I oversee all the consumer level data platforms, and it pertains to programs, integrations, and data architecture.
Hi, I'm Janine Silva. I'm from Investopedia. If any of you out there have ever taken a finance class in college or grad school, you've probably landed on Investopedia to figure out what EBITDA is or what the difference between a Roth IRA is and a regular IRA. So Investopedia is an educational financial website, and we're really starting to move into more news and insight content.
All right, great. Well, let's jump into the fun stuff. So it's been said quite a number of times, but in the age of the customer, it's our jobs as marketers to deliver personally relevant messaging that speaks to their needs, their interests, what products or solutions are most relevant at the right time. This creates complexity for us because we have to now create content that goes above the noise. So with that, Janine, I'm going to start with you. As Investopedia truly is a content king, you mentioned that you guys are creating almost 50 pieces of content a day, 20 million unique visitors a month, so it's fascinating. So if you would like to start with describing the ideal content framework.
Sure. Our ideal content framework is a little bit far away from what we currently do, but our ideal content framework would be to create a piece of content or multiple pieces of content around a news event, such as how much is oil? And that might mean something different to somebody who's reading us in Venezuela. What does that mean for their economy? Or somebody in Texas, what does that mean for jobs in Texas? Or somebody who holds a lot of oil ETFs in their portfolio, what does that mean for their portfolio? So figuring out who those people are, what they care about, and then delivering them, creating the content and delivering them that piece of content. We're also trying to distinguish our editorial voice and our curated branded voice from what's personalized, and I think that plays a big part in what our future strategy might look like.
Wonderful. And Itai, how are you addressing messaging relevancy, so the right message, context, the right place, and timing, essentially at the right point in time?
Yeah, so we put a lot of time and effort in thinking, okay, first of all, what's the content framework in terms of architecting the data? How are we going to store the data in a way that we can actually use it? And then it's about building the puzzle pieces of content, of what type of content are we going to show for each artist, all the personalization pieces, and then it's the technology that puts those together. And I'd say that I think the technology of putting the puzzle pieces together is there in many aspects in terms of marketing automation and personalization, but many times we lack all the right content pieces that we need in order to show those different variables or in order to personalize accordingly. But we are moving more and more from email blasts that are related to moments in the artist's cycle, so new music, new tour, new videos, to moments in the fan's life. For example, fan has a birthday and likes playlists, or fan just visited the artist store and left his cart, or fan just attended the show. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to do as many automated and triggered messaging based on that incoming data, and then put them in some sort of an onboarding journey based on that.
That's fantastic. So the customer is in the center. And then Wayne, I know you have a dynamic business model at Uber. So what's your perspective?
Yeah, so I think what everyone's saying is the right idea, right? It starts with the customer. It's like, what does the customer need? And you kind of go backwards from there with your content framework. So for Uber, local nuance, like city-specific information is very important, especially on the driver side, right? Because drivers need to know what's going on in their city, what are the important events, what are the times and places where they should be as a driver. So for us, in terms of creating a content framework, it's about leaving room for that flexibility and nuance, at a local level, where as we centralize things for complexity and kind of, we're getting much more complex with what we can do, how do we not lose sight of that ability for local teams to add that flavor and nuance that really enriches the experience for the end consumer, which in my case is the driver.
Okay, fantastic. So in summary here, it's right message to the right audience at the right place at the right time. So now with personalization, there's implications for a more holistic customer strategy. So let's start with Itay. I know you're managing not only artists, but you have an umbrella of different labels, as well as putting the customer first. So you have a lot on your hands.
Yeah, I'd say we kind of manage over 1,000 email lists for each of our artists, and then we have overarching label lists and overarching like a streaming list and a Warner list. And so when it comes to the artists, kind of like audience, it's about the time of where the consumer is in his life cycle. Did he just attend the show? Is he a 99-cent fan on iTunes, or is he going to buy the VIP package? And we kind of try to build the fan tiers and message across based on that. For our larger audiences, we assume their interests. So if you're signed up to an artist, or if you visited an artist's website, maybe that's the type of artist you like. And when we present recommendations, this is the type of recommendations you'd want. We also allow them to apply genres that are not just about music genres, but for example, playlist genres like workout, mood, chill, party. And we've seen that when you send somebody who asks for a workout playlist, that playlist, it has 3 times the engagement rate than it would that the biggest pop fans would get. So we try to see how can we build more content and learn more about our fans, whether we ask them or whether we assume it based on their behavior. We assume geographical data based on either when they sign up, the IP or the open IP, and we funnel that if we don't have that information for them. And then we have a couple of actionable programs that come out of that, right? So if we know where you are now and the artist comes into town, then we're going to send you an alert. There's an automated system, a program that actually 10 days before every show, going to send just the people in that area an email alert with, hey, I'm coming to town, come see me. And if it's going to be an overall email newsletter, then each person will see just the shows in about 100-mile radius around where they live. So we're trying, so that they don't have to scroll through 50 dates or whatever. So we're trying to minimize it and show just the relevant content for each fan based on what we know about them.
That's fantastic. I love the fact that you're integrating music into the lifestyle of the customer. So it's not just about the transaction, it's being relevant to their needs and behaviors, so you can embrace their lifestyle.
And I have to add that we have about 200 users around the world doing CRM or CRM strategy or touching the marketing or email system, and they're all starting to become more advanced. So a couple years ago, they were all about just how to get best tools to send emails faster and operational efficiency. And today, they're all interested in personalization and how they get better and more relevant with what they do and what they send and communicate to fans.
Yeah, I think from a strategic standpoint, that's that's really what we talk about. What do we do with this data and all that stuff? That's what it opens up for you, right? Is you can be more selective about how and where you approach the communication to your consumers, so that you might have a select set of goals that you're trying to get them toward, right? But based on their motivations and what you know about them, it might take different kinds of communication or different themes of communication to get them to those goals. So as you understand more about those motivations, and you can kind of craft the messaging accordingly, it feels very one-to-one to them, because it's right in line with their needs and what they expect to get there.
Great. And Wayne, I know that Uber, there's been a high focus on growth. So how have you been addressing the journey and being relevant from an audience strategy standpoint?
Yeah, so kind of along the lines of what I was just saying, as users are coming to the platform from a driver standpoint, those motivations, range all over the place, right? So if someone's coming in organically, or if someone is coming in by way of a referral, those motivations and the steps of the funnel that they're willing to kind of proceed with on their own are going to be drastically different. So one of our big challenges is kind of understanding what those motivations are, and making sure that we balance the content and the information that we provide to them, so that it's the right information that they need to get past those barriers, and we're not presenting a bunch of information to them that they don't need. They're going to get there on their own.
Okay, great. And Janine, from an Investopedia standpoint, how has moving from one-to-all to one-to-one changed your customer strategy?
Sure. We face the challenge that you can only slice finance so many different ways versus some other big publishers where they have sports and they have finance and they have news. Our current model is really focused on those verticals, and we'd like to move from having a Forex newsletter and a personal finance newsletter and a retirement newsletter to really taking users' interests and their behavior and serving them content that's just relevant to them. I think another big challenge of this is that the content on our site has been tagged over the 15 years by different freelancers and editors, and there's not a lot of consistency with that data. So personalization is great and the technology is great, but it's really, for us, only as good as the data we put into it. So we've had to do a lot of work in cleaning that up before we can really see return investment here.
Great, and that's a fantastic segue into my next question. So like any relationship, it's a two-way street. So it's not all about what we send to our customers. It's also what sort of data are we acquiring so we can continue to optimize and be more relevant as we go. So marketing is most effective when we can extract what is truly relevant and essential. So when we think about being personalized, there often is a ton of data that we start acquiring. So Wayne, how are you managing that?
Yeah, bit by bit, I guess. Uber's a data-driven company, right? With the amount of data that we consume and the amount of data that we are able to acquire and understand about our users is tremendous, more so than anywhere I've ever worked. But that can be extremely overwhelming, right? So you take a look at this data and it's like, oh, I have access to all this. What should I do with this? What should I do with this? And you can kind of find yourself like in these rabbit holes sometimes where it's like, you're chasing some piece of data and you're on this fringe case where it doesn't really matter to anyone. It's just something you've become intrigued with. So like we kind of started with it. It's starting with the customer, the consumer, right? Like what is it that they expect? What is it that they want? And how can you better that and enrich that? And from there, what data do you have available to create an experience that really gets you there? And I don't think you should, I know there's usually like an overwhelming desire to go crazy with what you can do with data, but I think sometimes that the small wins, like taking a look at the stuff you have and saying like, hey, this is a very simple use case of data that we have easily accessible, and this creates a lot of value, and start with that and kind of move incrementally.
And I think that a lot of companies in a way are jealous of Uber and like companies that have
Go on.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. In terms of access to data, their business model is about data and how they use it to best of their abilities to do whatever else the value proposition that they have. And a lot of other companies that are kind of like pre-2000, pre-95 also have tons of data, but they don't really have good access to it, and they don't really know how to start looking at the historical data. And now they're kind of like facing the challenges of how do they bring everything together and how to personalize based on that. So it's nice to hear that Uber has challenges too. But no, but it's interesting because at the end of the day, it's about tons of data. How do you make sense of it, and how do you just drill it down to what's really personalized and actionable? And it's about looking at what you have, right? So we had a streaming audience that we realized we have complete birthday information on, and we went to our curation team and we said, hey, like we have these amount of people, and we know this data point about them. Let's do something interesting for them. And so we have a triggered birthday campaign, and based on when you were born and where you live, you'd get a birthday message that is in the language of the country you live in, and also personalized to your decade of birth. So child of the 90s, child of the 80s, child of the 70s. And that's been getting really great engagement. The fans understand that we know something about them. And it's really something that's cool for them and interesting to them that they get on their birthday. Something else that you could do is, okay, you have geographical data, you have zip codes. But for us, zip codes are very narrow. When we're trying to look at people and fans travel, they go to different places to see their artists, and they're willing to drive, they're willing to go sometimes very far. State borders are not ideal for this, and zip codes are too narrow for this. So what we did is we kind of manipulated the data and we built a zip code map. So we created markets, which is like an area around Los Angeles, or an area around Nashville, an area around Boston. And that's the attribute we use when we do the personalized tour alerts, for example. So you could use your data and build upon it to get it to wherever you need it to be to run your automation and personalization programs.
I think similar to Wayne, we have a challenge of picking which data points are relevant to us. We have such a big international audience, so the type of content that resonates with them can be vastly different than our US-centric audience. I also think that life stage is a data point that we would love to be able to personalize and segment off of. If you're buying a house, you have a much different outlook on your finances than if you're planning on retiring. And then the other challenge we have is we have the user interests that they select, that they say, yes, I'm interested in, and what they're actually doing. So I can sit here and say, I love to eat kale salad for lunch, when in actuality, I eat fried chicken. So I think blending the two together to really create a good user experience can sometimes be challenging, and that's where we're at.
Yeah. You have to be sensitive to what your promise is from a business standpoint, like what you promise the consumer, and then if what you're doing with data actually lives up to that promise. Like one of the things we're working on is like predictive models, right, to like understand drivers' behavior before they do it. But from a business promise, one of the things that we promise to a driver is the flexibility to kind of work when they want, do what they want. Like that's one of the value props to becoming an Uber driver. So by predictively trying to tell them what to do, are we then are we taking away from that promise that they should be able to do whatever they want on their own time? So I think that's something you kind of have to consciously like keep in mind as you work towards these things. Being more and more developed and having more and more data isn't necessarily always the best thing.
And you can look at, okay, what's the threshold of entry point that you could then serve in terms of content, right? So if I only know fans that they may like an artist because they visited the site on our website network, or they are on one artist email list, and so they may like similar artists. So the fans on, to me it's fans, it's not users or consumers, so I always say fans. The fans, maybe if they're on an artist list, we can serve them based on their tier, the VIP package, the bundle on the exclusive bundle on the store, or the album on iTunes or whatever. But if we just think that they may like a different artist, we'll start with a lower threshold kind of action, I'd say, right? So we won't show them the bundle, the exclusive bundle, the VIP package for a different artist. We'd say, hey, here's a video of an artist you might like, or here's a piece of content or a streaming, like a playlist that will introduce him to that artist. And then if they want, we have a mechanism that allows them to click into the artist stream, and then they become an artist subscriber as well. But until then, they get low threshold recommendations of content that they can interact with until they kind of like decide they want to move and be a bigger fan of a certain brand or artist.
It truly is a nurture stream, and looking for those data triggers to begin pushing the individual through the funnel. So one thing, as we move to a one-to-one environment, there is omni-channel implications. The customers today want personalized content, not just in their email, but on all channels that they engage with. So Janine, from your perspective, to what degree have you begun to introduce one-to-one communication across channels?
So we don't have a mobile app, but we do have this stock simulator game on our website. You can create your own fake portfolio with some fake money and follow these types of stocks. So we've begun to mine this data to see, okay, how many people have Facebook in their portfolio? Can we begin to trigger messages to them to say, this is what this stock did today, these are the big movers, this is the news on the stock, and blend that information with our email. We have used some of our email data to do more targeted messages on social, but that's really all we've explored for cross-channel.
Okay, and Wayne.
Yeah, so Uber's inherently a mobile product. So the rider driver side, you kind of have to have the app to use it, and pretty much every user has to enter a phone number as well. So SMS and push notifications, mobile notifications are big for us. One of the things we're exploring is the right mix, and then looking to get that to a one-to-one level. So obviously, there's kind of the broad question of what's the right mix of channels and messaging, and then one-to-one, how can you say, okay, well, for each individual user, we present them with a message in this channel and they do or don't respond, what's the next channel we follow up with? That's kind of one of the things we're moving more towards on the driver side. The rider side gets a little bit more complex, right? So I think one of the unique ways the rider side is using that is opening the Uber API up to multiple platforms. So essentially you can request a ride from most mobile messaging or social platforms now. With that, it really makes the conversation interesting, right? Because you can start to understand so much more context about how a user is engaging with and when and how they're choosing to use the platform, and because you're already on those platforms with the product there, the messaging opportunities you can get a lot more creative with that. So yeah, definitely some cool stuff going on.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of companies that don't have mobile apps or don't power their own mobile apps, if you do, definitely, I think being able to identify what is the preference of the consumer and what type of channel they want to interact with and how you kind of like build that journey is an important step. But even if you don't, there's a lot of ways to use and utilize cross-channel marketing to your advantage. The 3 areas I can think about, one would be, for example, integrated marketing, for example, in terms of acquisition, right? So if you have some sort of a contest or sweepstakes, you make sure to create a Facebook lead generation card, a Twitter card, and a splash page on the website so that everything funnels into the same place and you catch the consumers wherever they are into your marketing campaign. Another one example of outbound marketing would be custom audience. Right? So you use your email list and you upload it to Facebook so that you could target these people on a different medium. But you could also use APIs and integrations to your advantage. So we don't have a mobile app, but we have, for example, a web app that allows fans to upload their photo as the cover of an artist album, and then they are kind of like a part of the cover, and they could then share that image. But once you navigate away from that web page, you lost your image if you didn't download it. So what we do is in real time, we push that into our email system, the email address along with the but the personalized image that the fan just created, and they get that via email. So it's both a data acquisition, it works both as data acquisition campaign, but also the fan now has a memorabilia of what they just created, and they can save it, they can go back to it later and share it, etc. So you could use APIs and integration to move data that fan created on an app or on a website into email and serve it that way.
Great. So the 2 big takeaways I'm hearing is that the journey is no longer linear. If we're going to be customer first, it's a dynamic environment in which we have to continue to test and see what channel is most effective to keep having that conversation. So moving on to our next question here as we continue to move in our learning environment. So what's next? How the landscape's consistently changing, and Wayne, I know that Uber is known for sustaining innovation. What's next for you guys?
Yeah, that's
Uber Light.
Yeah, right. I wish I knew. I think what's next for me is kind of maintaining the flexibility to help kind of speak to whatever is next. So Uber's kind of constantly changing the landscape. Our business is constantly changing. There's days I wake up and wish I hadn't and just want to go back to bed because things have drastically changed, and I know that means my job is going to be miserable for the next few days. So that's kind of the what's like. There's kind of the broader points that will get spoken to. That were talked about all day yesterday and today. But I think specifically for me, kind of what I can offer is as you're moving forward, make sure that you're kind of building in room for flexibility and remaining nimble with whatever you do. like I said, I work for a company where it does change hourly in some cases, but I think every business, every industry is going to pivot at some point. And if you're not set up in a way to react to that and do so, or even get ahead of it, then that's going to present itself as a huge problem for you.
Great, I love that point. It sounds like staying status quo is one of the biggest risks in your business model. So, Janine, what's your perspective? Where are you guys headed next?
I don't know if this is where we're headed next, but it's the idea that I've been thinking of, like nurturing the new audience. We write a ton of content for millennial audience. We are beginning to branch out to more wealthy individuals, how to manage your wealth. But I think figuring out where our content can live for the next generation. Is it Snapchat? Is it some cool thing I don't even know about? And do we start to nurture that relationship so that when they are ready to get our term of the day newsletter and pass their CFA exam or set up their 401k, they'll sign up for our newsletter, they'll come and read content on our site. So I think figuring out the distribution for our content beyond email and how that integrates with email is probably a topic I'll be thinking about a lot.
Great. And just a question for the audience, how many of you millennials, has that been a hot topic in terms of content generation? Raise your hand if so. Great. Okay.
What's next? I think definitely focusing on the bridge between anonymous data and known data. So there's limited insight into, okay, there's CRM data, that's great, people that logged in, people that purchased, people that are on our email list. But when you look at our global network of websites or stores or and other properties, there's a lot of anonymous visits and a lot of anonymous fans that are interacting, but we don't necessarily know them. So one of the big initiatives for us is bridging that gap and collecting the behavior profiles and then at some point connecting them, whether it's through partners or through increasing our own network or progressive profiling, etc. And the second would probably be more around predictive intelligence. Maybe if you come to a big store with 400 artists, we'll kind of know, either we know about you or as you browse, we'll adapt the product offering based on your behavior.
So a little bit of fortune telling, knowing what the customer wants before they tell us, essentially.
Ideally.
Okay, so now we'll do kind of a quick lightning questions for you guys. So Wayne, starting with you, what is your biggest pain point right now? 30 seconds.
Yeah, so my biggest pain point is, I think it originates from the way Uber grew, right? So we have HQ marketing initiatives, we have regional marketing initiatives, and we have city marketing initiatives. And as we look to centralize that, kind of what I spoke to earlier, how do we do that in a way that that still allows for local city nuance, like local information, but is centralized enough that we can put better QA processes, make sure that we're doing everything to the highest quality standards. That's kind of what keeps me up at night right now.
Yeah, so being personalized, but being able to manage. Okay, what about you?
For us, I have three tiers of users or marketers, really. Some all over the world. Some are basic users that we want them to adopt email with whatever enterprise system we have. The other ones are more advanced and they want best practices and get better at their campaigns, and then the advanced want like one-to-one personalization. And so managing all those tiers with all that data across 1,000 brands, it's pretty challenging.
So internal dynamics.
Yeah.
For us, I think cadence is a big challenge, figuring out how often we should be sending our curated, news-oriented, before-the-bell newsletters versus how often we should be sending our vertical newsletters or our personalized newsletters, and does that vary among the different segments, among different life stages, among regions, all of these data points that we have.
Fantastic. Okay, so the last question for me, and then I'll open it up to the room. So what is the big takeaway? What would you want to share with everybody, the big lesson learned? Anybody?
Okay, I'll start. So for us, it's really been about data syntax and data tagging or syntax. a lot of companies have tons of historical information, and it's a daunting task to look at, like what Investopedia is doing, or we need to put a lot of effort in tagging our information so that we can personalize. And on our end, we just realized that there's so much data acquired in the past years through so many systems, and it's so unnormalized that it's very tough to really start going back and figuring out what is what. And so we said, let's just do this moving forward. And we built, for example, a data source syntax, which is every piece of data that comes in tied to a consumer. We know the campaign name, the brand name, the medium it came through, the publishing tool it came through. And then now we have a weekly report that shows me the top 50 growing artists campaigns in the past week, and it's very readable. You could very easily see which campaign drove what and what was the nature of that campaign. And because it's a syntax, it also allows for some analysis because it's pretty consistent. So I think just stop where you are, and if too much daunting task to look at historical data, just create something and move forward. Before no time, you'll have enough information to start working on and personalizing on, and critical mass to start understanding what you need to do and how you can action on it.
So any other critical tips for the audience here?
Sure. I think it doesn't matter how good your technology is, your user experience, you have to tell a good story. You have to have context to that story and connect on an emotional level, as we heard earlier today. So as much as we test and we try to think the best experience as marketers, I think it all comes back to the content and the story and the relevancy.
Great.
I think just to kind of piggyback on both those things, I think don't get ahead of yourself, right? I think it's always better to do fewer things extremely well and with a tremendous amount of context than to do a lot of things and do them really shitty. So.
Great. And if we have time, thank you guys.
We've got time for a couple of questions anyway.
Great. The gentleman in the front row.
Sure. All right. So the biggest question I think I have is how much conversation is having between organizations like Uber and Warner, because I think the two of you guys could probably collaborate a lot more with data. Because think being a music fan myself, going to concerts, then you needing to know when to tell the drivers where to be afterwards. This show's going to get out. Everybody's going to need an Uber after that, and then how to get that information back to you to be able to say, personalize that to the users. I went to this show from Uber. How is that data sharing happening between organizations? Is it at all?
Interesting. We actually had an interesting Uber campaign in Nashville. It was called Uber Country, and you could get an Uber, and then inside an artist would wait for you, and you can have a conversation. Like if you got one of those cars, it'll be free for you, and you'd have that type of experience. And that's more about the experience and the branding. When it comes to data, if you look at the relationship between all these companies, if we had a relationship on Facebook, you would say it's complicated. It's about, sometimes there's tight partnership. We don't have a specific one with Uber, but it's not to say that we can't have. It could, now Wayne and I are actually talking about it, but we'll talk about it later. Some of it could be second-party data that's shared through DMPs, or it could be a direct partnership. And it could be at the brand level or maybe at the corporate level. It happens sometimes. It really depends on the goal and if it makes sense.
I think there's two parts of it. Right? So a lot of those partnerships, Uber's constantly kind of looking for those kinds of things, and how can we take relevant events, those kinds of things, and make ourselves a better part of that. On the data side, like you said, it gets a little bit more tricky, especially with Uber. There's so many privacy concerns about our data and what can and can't be shared. So it gets kind of murky there, so a lot of that is avoided. But so as we move forward, I'm sure that'll become more and more a piece of what we do.
Yeah, great question. So what's next? Does anyone else in the room have a question? No.
Got another one?
So one of the things you mentioned is all the different places that you're looking to collect data, Wayne, in particular. How do you strategize about where you're going next to find different data sources to listen to? And then taking that, again, you mentioned having a common syntax into how you're classifying all that.
Again, it starts with the customer, right? So it's like, where is the customer? You know what I mean? And what are they doing? And how can we be a part of that? So I don't know that it's necessarily like trying to invent places where we can collect data from them, but where are they already, and how can we be bigger part of whatever it is they're doing, right? So obviously social is is kind of the first, the first starting place for that, because it's like people are communicating about what they're going to do, where they're going to go, what their plans are for the night, that kind of thing. And Uber is a direct part of that, right? So how, after you've made those plans, how are you going to get there? So it's understanding where the customers are, how and when they're in the context of talking about things or engaging in activities that relate to our business. And then if we can be a part of that, let's do it. Let's collect as much data as we can, and then be a relevant part of that experience, whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think social is when you tap into social logins, then you get this mass amounts of data. The question is, what do you do with it? Because now I have so many variables, and how do I make it at the first step to a finite amount of attributes that I could actually use, and maybe at the next step some sort of programmatic solution that could actually serve one-to-one content to the different people. But that's something that needs a lot. It also needs to hit critical mass till you actually put time and effort into it over your other programs, because it's all about prioritization. But certainly anonymous to known data. So there's a lot of ways today to collect more and more information, like the whole universal ID discussion. Maybe overlay data and close gaps in data that you already have through progressive profiling or partnerships, or just building an anonymous profile that at some point you'll be able to identify.
I guess on top of that, how do you prioritize? How do you do that? It sounds like something that's very difficult.
That's a session tomorrow, a full day. I'm gonna. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to consider the alternative, the best alternative, and you got to be very aggressive with your top things that you need versus what you want.
I think being as disciplined as you can with KPIs, right? Understand what those are, and sometimes that's a tough choice. You have to make a very difficult decision between what's good and what's best, but being as disciplined as you can and remaining focused on what those things are, and making sure that you're measuring everything you do against that. Like, does this action really help me get to point A, or whatever your end goal is?
Okay, we got.
Okay.
Sorry, one more question over there, and then.
Hi, my name is Tanishk. Wayne, so we get this great content from Uber. We want to understand, is your content driven by human? There's a team for it, or it's more machine learning driven content? What is the kind of percentage you have?
Yeah, right now it's pretty much all team driven. So our content is all driven by the brand team, and making sure that everything we present, is like I kind of spoke to earlier, that lives up to our brand promise, right? So that's something that we're very proud of, and that we hold as a measuring stick against everything we do. Is the content we're putting out, are the things we're asking of people, does that live up to our brand promise? So I think a lot of that comes from a very human element. So it's all produced by teams in house. We're now looking at ways to expand on that, right? Using that as a starting point, and then how can we use machine learning to better that, and kind of take us the extra mile. But yeah, that's where we're at right now.
And how big is your content team?
Big. It's huge. It kind of services teams all across the business. For me specifically, I think there's there's probably about 10 or 15 people that service just kind of like CRM as a team. But yeah, across the board, there's content generators everywhere across the company. I wish I could give you an exact number.
Awesome, no problem. Thanks.
All right, please thank the panel. That was awesome.
Thank you, guys.
I think one of the really interesting threads was this kind of emerging idea of a data marketplace. I mean, obviously data is something we assign value to, and then the logical thing after that is you start to build a value chain and a marketplace around data, and these cross-brand data exchanges, I think, are going to be a really interesting thing to think about in the future. What does that that data marketplace look like? We're going to move right into the roundtables, but before I do that, just a couple of notes about the activities. How many people here are going horseback riding? Hands up. I've been told to warn you, please do not wear sandals. They will not let you on a horse if you're wearing sandals. You will need to wear shoes, and probably not shorts. It would be a good idea. Yeah, shorts and a horse are just not a good combination. It's not a good cross-channel mix. And also for anyone, for all the activities, but especially for horseback riding, you're going to be assembling at 1:45. Don't be late. You will be left without a horse. So, so do that. And I think pretty much all the activities are... Yeah, we're moving things along. We're actually right on track. So thanks to all the panels who helped us get back on track. So we've picked up the time. So the roundtables. Selecting and migrating to an ESP. Chris Marriott's going to be your host there. From good to great, more tactics to move the needle. What do we got back in the corner there, Omari? Okay. All right, so we're going to move right into the roundtables. I will go around and give all the table leads a 5-minute warning. Then we're going to go right into lunch, and then we're going to saddle up and sunset. Pardon? MediaPost over lunch. Oh yes, and we're hearing from MediaPost. John, are you going? I'm sure John will be coming up and giving them an intro.
Great brands go with great brands. Great brands go with McDonald's and Coke. We're a little bit more arch-color. I hope I get anybody on my team. It should be a burning. It should be a burning issue, or I did. I know. Well, we'll just see what happens. It's interesting now that big over how to select new ESPs.
Oh.
Somebody else vendors.
I believe that's back in that corner there.
Right.
Hey, 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 hey. Okay. All right, everybody. All right. It's lunchtime. So the same drill as yesterday. Hope you guys had a nice set of discussions. So just like yesterday, go out, grab your food, come right back in here because we have a lunch and learn presentation from Bob Frady, the illustrious Bob Frady and MediaPost. That's going to start in about 10 minutes. And I'll also explain to you the afternoon activities, timing, logistics, and all that good stuff, and the evening functions as well. But go out, get your food, come right back in here, and we'll get started.
You're always a food chain, Christopher. Ben's not Mexican Day, so let somebody steal my seat. formal, but not a like compliment stuff. Yes. And her slides are too. She's teaching. Yeah. Presentation. That's a teacher. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I get nervous here. When I give presentations here, I probably prep 5 times longer than I do at home. Yeah. Yeah, somebody asked me about that for like I get nervous speaking and no. And I said this, my peers are in here somewhere. If I say the wrong thing, and I'll agree with Twitter, we get hard questions. So used to the DA. Melanie used to do events, our EC event. Came to work. She's still in the DA when I'm spending money. Feeling like a cab wasn't the best idea. Already at $40. I don't know if it's worth it. Because she's covering the event. Our party. We got a DJ. It's nothing I want to have. So she's so concerned about spending too much. Which I loved. But she called me the other day, she was like, is it okay if I spend $300? Fish! There you go. Let's see how he does it.
Hey, Bob. I'm going to make some announcements, and then Ken's going to introduce you. Yeah, Okay. Hey, everybody. How are you? Hey, guys. How's it going? You guys having a good one? Okay, sorry to interrupt your conversation here. I just have some important information about the afternoon and the evening that I want to make sure you're aware of. For the activities, horseback riding, fishing, and the kayak tour, those shuttles are going to depart at 1:45 right out in front of the hotel. So if you're on those, make sure you're there by 1:45. For golf, we're going to leave at 1:45 as well, unless you've made other arrangements with your foursome to get to the golf course on your own, which is totally fine. But otherwise, we'll be there at 1:45 to take you. And then Celigent's Cabana Hangout, that's going to begin at 2 p.m. for those who are going to hang out today and you want to get some sun and fun. That's at 2 p.m., but it's very important here. If you're going to do that, you got to bring your badges to the cabana, and then they're going to exchange the badges for wristbands that will then enable you to get complimentary beverages for the afternoon. So don't forget your badges, otherwise you won't be able to take advantage of all the fun. Tonight, we've got cocktails at 6:30. They're going to take place right out back here on the patio. It's a beautiful view of the ocean, which should be nice, and that's sponsored by Adobe. And then we have the dinner that's going to take place on the lawn just above the patio, and that's going to be at 7:30. That's sponsored by Epsilon. Again, don't forget, this is an 80s themed dinner. So if you haven't stocked up on the props, go out and go to the Epsilon tabletop and get and gear up, because they got a lot of cool things for the party or for the dinner tonight. And like I said before, if you don't have a mullet, you're going to look stupid. You have to have a mullet, or you're going to look like you're from another planet. And finally, to close out the night, we're going to continue the 80s theme with the Adestra after party. Ryan Phelan and team have a big night planned for you. They're bringing in a DJ. They've got a photo booth. I hear there's dancing hippos. I don't know. I got nothing. But it's all types of fun, and that begins at about 9 o'clock, and that's going to be right next door in the Plaza Room. So just follow the crowd when that takes place. And that's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Ken Fadner, who's going to introduce me.
And now, as the CMO of MediaPost, a long friend of the Insider Summit series, I think you'll enjoy hearing from him. He's keynote worthy. He's been a keynote at our shows in the past. Here's Bob Frady.
Thank you, Ken. Hi, everybody. I want to talk today about reducing your email campaign creation time to 0. However, we have to take a little history trip back to Saturday when I left John Wayne Airport in beautiful, sunny, temperate, and dry Southern California. And I said, Amelia Island, I'm on my way. Please don't rain for 72 hours straight this year. It looks like we cut that in half and only rained for 48 hours straight, and the sunshine has finally come out. So big round of applause for John for bringing the sunshine out this afternoon. But because it did rain yesterday, we got some specialness. I'm not sure of those of you who went bowling yesterday, but we got to go to the Nassau. So yesterday, I was bowling in Florida in a place with no Wi-Fi during a tornado warning. Like the meta scale just broke when I was there at that bowling alley. But then we started drinking cider because it was gluten-free, and the meta meter went back to 0. So I had a great time yesterday, and I got a great story out of it. Okay, but that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about how to reduce your email campaign creation time to 0. First of all, who's MediaPost? We are the best, fastest growing ESP in the world because I said so. We're one of Canada's fastest growing companies. We'll probably be number 5 or number 6 this year. Here's our motto. Others dream it, we build it. We like to build our own technology. We're constantly building new technology. We're the marketing cloud that works. We're competing with some big giant companies. Salesforce is $1 billion company, IBM, Adobe. All of these companies are huge. The only way that we can compete at that level is to innovate. Who am I? Before I became a vendor and went to the dark side about a year ago, I was actually a brand marketer, where I either built or ran the email infrastructures for these companies. I've sent 7 billion emails, 35,000 campaigns. You know, Ryan calls me a spammer. That's okay. I'm okay with that. So I look at these problems not necessarily from a vendor side standpoint, but how can we better apply our technology to the users to make your lives easier? Because frankly, creating emails is kind of a pain in the neck, and it hasn't changed very much in the last 15 years. Okay, so how do we do this? Here's the email creation process. Yours may be different, but this is the ones that I've seen in the past at the brands that I run. You create the content or get content links for your content team. You put those in a spreadsheet and you store them till you're needed to generate the email. You add tracking links to each newsletter, usually your little columns in the spreadsheet. You paste that content and tracking links into your template. Hopefully you don't make any mistakes. You upload the images for each piece of content. Then you edit the HTML template to make sure the image links point to the appropriate image. Once you're done with that, you test the rendering of the HTML to make sure it looks right, whether you use email on acid or whether you use Litmus. You don't want to make any mistakes. You attach the content inside of your email to the appropriate list. You schedule the emailing to be sent. Make sure that you schedule it for the appropriate time. Although I did have a marketer who worked for me one time who sent 2 emails in one day rather than on days right after each other. And we increased our revenue 50%, so we went to twice a day sending after that. So I suppose scheduling mistakes aren't always bad. Then you repeat the entire process the next time you want to create an email. So if you're creating emails every day, you have to do this every single day. And you have to put off any tests that you would like to run in your program. The earlier presentation about testing being the lifeblood of email marketing could not be more true. You need more time to run tests in your email system. So here's our process. And what's great about MediaPost, as far as I'm concerned, is that when I gave a version of this presentation a month ago, there was one way to do this. But now there's 2. And it really depends upon the assets you have available inside of your organization. The right choice depends upon your resources. So choice 1. Where your web resources are greater than your email resources. It might be you and maybe one other person on your email team, but there's a whole bunch of web coders out there who are always chomping at the bit to build pages. If that's the case, what we want to do in that case is to reverse the process. Every single email that you see has a View in Browser tab on it. Almost everyone has View in Browser. So basically what you're doing is reversing the entire process. So it looks like this, and it looks like that in your phone. Use the web what it's best for, which is content management. So how do you do that with MediaPost? Number 1 on your side is you create a page that looks like an email. 600 characters wide, you set up your ad tags, all that stuff. So basically you create a page that looks like this. Then you add your analytics tags, make sure that you update the date so it changes every day. Put your email advertising in there, whether it's Live Intent or Power Inbox or whatever you have. And then put a little code in there so the crawlers don't come and look at your page so it doesn't index. So basically what you've done is you create a web page that looks like an email. So step 2 is you use your CMS to assign your content to that specific page. Now, some of you don't have a CMS. That's a little bit problematic. You may have to write some custom code, but if you are using a CMS, what you would do is say, piece of content A goes to my home page, but also goes to my newsletter page. So let your CMS decide where that goes. And then when you update the content, you automatically update the page. So as you have content coming in and you assign it to your home page, you assign it to your email page as well, and the email is consistently updated. Here's what we do on our side. We have a function inside of our system called pull from URL, which is right there. You type in the URL, and it pops in the content. You make a campaign out of it, you do a spam check, you schedule a campaign to repeat. This campaign repeats every day at 8 a.m. So every day at 8 a.m., our system will wake up, go out and look for that URL, pull that URL in, wrap it in our technology, and then send the email out the door. You don't have to do anything. So we'll get the URL, look at that, we'll wrap it in our technology. And that's an important point because you want to make sure that your links are coming from your ESP, not necessarily from your website. So, because that way we can track what actually happens inside of the email. We provide an updated campaign name, so every day you'll have a unique campaign. The content will change dynamically, but the results of the campaign will be static because you'll be able to say Monday's campaign, Tuesday's campaign, Wednesday's campaign. Step 4 is to measure. All right, boy. You give Zeta the MediaPost monkey and look what happens. You want to measure again, and then take it up a notch. Here's some things that you can do. Now you can have a single page that has your content, or you can have multiple pages. You could have a page for morning versus afternoon content if they're dramatically different and you're sending twice a day, God forbid. You can have regional content. So if you've got markets that have specific and defined territories, you can create a page for each market and then automate the generation of all those markets at one time. You can have segment level content. So let's take a very basic, pant buyers versus shirt buyers. Can be different segments in your database and set up different pages for them as well. You can have language-specific content. Part of what we do inside of MediaPost is we read the browser header language, so we know what language people are opening up their emails in. You can record that, so if you want to send out a French language version of your email, you know who opens their browsers in French and can make them a segment. Spend your time testing and learning, not creating emails. Okay, choice number 2. This is when your email resources are greater than or equal to your web resources. Maybe you've got someone on your team who's really skilled at using scripting language in order to build emails. Part 1 is multiple content feeds. MediaPost supports multiple content feeds. There are 2 types of content feeds that we support. The first is that you create an RSS or a JSON feed. Install it in your email template. 2 types of feeds. The first are static feeds. It might be daily news. It might be monthly bestsellers. It might be quotes of the day. Whatever feed that you have, potentially that you use on your website, you could repurpose inside of your email by having that static content feed. Now, which is brand new, and we're announcing it today here at MediaPost, because of course you announce all of your big product releases here at MediaPost, is we're announcing personalized feeds as well. So you can have a feed specific to the person on your email, not just the content block on that email. How does it work? Web data plus email data equals your profile. Your profile plus your content plus your decision rules engine, the machine, equals personalized recommendations. One template plus multiple feeds plus automation is automated personalized emails, lights out. Here's how it would work. This content block is featured articles. You pull that content block in. This content block is top picks of the week. Separate content feed altogether. It comes from a different place. That down in this area down here, of course, is for your advertising tags or your advertising that you want to put in there. And then this one is top news for you, built upon a combination of your web behaviors and your email behaviors. What you can do is set this up, and it does take a little bit of scripting work to get it right, but once you set it up, you can run this every single day, and all of that content will dynamically update, personalize for everyone on your list who you're sending to, with no additional effort outside of that first email content creation. Either method, you win. I cannot tell you how many times as a brand marketer you sent your email out and then there's a busted link or something happened, it didn't work, just aggravating as hell. This eliminates that problem for you. You win. You get more time, you get cost savings, you get error reduction, you get personalized automation, you get time for testing, you get a better email program, you get more innovation from MediaPost. Who? MediaPost, who are they? Can you roll it? Here's our introduction. Whatsoever, I'm happy to help. Have a great afternoon. Thank you very much.
Wow, short and sweet. A guy who's not so short and